Hey there, this is Danny Barker with eXp Realty here in San Diego, California. Thanks for joining me again today. Again, I'm a 20-year retired U.S. Navy veteran. I was a nuke machinist mate in the United States Navy from 99 to 19. Been a real estate agent ever since. My niche is that I have a referral network across the United States that is comprised of well-performing agents in every single market across the United States. Now, if you want to strategize on using your VA loan in certain ways that you don't know if it's allowed or how it would look or what to expect, then do reach out to me and we can set up an appointment for us to go one-on-one and dive into whatever situation that you're in and what you want to come out of it looking like. So today is going to be a really long video and I really apologize for that, but I hope that you find that it's worth watching the whole thing. I'm gonna go a little bit slower on my voice pace because a lot of these communications that I'm about to do do with numbers. So now I need you to be able to hear what I'm saying and apply it to the appropriate place in your thought process during this video. So here we go. What are we doing today? We're going to go over why it is that properties sell for more than what they would rent for. Why would the payment be higher on the mortgage and owning it than it would be on the rent? And the answer to that question is that most people are renting from owners that bought those properties long enough ago or with a big enough down payment that their liability, so their holding costs and maintenance and whatnot, is covered by the rent. Now, how do they do that, right? How would I do that now as a zero down VA buyer? There are some markets. The answer to the question is that there are some markets that do consist of deals that you can buy zero down, live in it for however long you need to, knowing confidently the whole time from day one that you could move out, be told that you're, transferring to the next place early or whatever the case is, unplanned move, and you get to move out and put a renter in it. And in those very few markets in America, there are a few, you can expect that the property's rental income will cover your mortgage that you just got with a VA zero down. Now, for the rest of us in the United States, we have the negative cash flow if that were to happen to us, right? I have one client that's $1,600 a month negative cash flow because he bought a condominium here in Escondido. He was stationed here for shore duty. He got a ship that was up in Washington and is now moving to Norfolk, Virginia. He had to move out, obviously, and when he went to place his renters, they were only able and willing to pay $1,600 less than what his cost is for the mortgage, the property taxes, the insurance, the HOA, and the maintenance that comes up. So unfortunately for him, he's in a scenario that we're going to talk about and deep dive into. And I will tell you right now that buys you into what I'm seeing as about a 22-year hold in order for it to make sense. Now here, let's get into the numbers. Let's do it. So in order to do it, we needed to do an example. And in order to show you the example, I just need you to Google an address real quick, right? So we are going to be doing our example on 1173 to 1179 Felspar Street, Felspar Street. Now, this property is listed for $3,350,000. They have the rents that are being collected listed as the 3-bedroom rents for $4,600, and then the other 3 units are 2-bedroom units, and they rent for $2,995, $2,995, and $2,795. So that's a total rent collected with full occupancy today at the rates that they publish that they are collecting at $13,385 per month. You're thinking $3.35 million, $13,385 a month. So if I take that $13,385 and I times that by 12, that gives me $160,000. So if you were to, I don't know, have $3.35 million sitting somewhere that pays you $160,000 a year, let's see what that would be on just a simple percentage wise. So that's 4.8%. That sounds like it's about bigger than your high yield savings accounts, smaller than the S&P 500. Now, I spent a couple of hours putting together this topic and all of my numbers here, so do bear with me. Now, this $13,385 a month that's going to be collected by the property owner with all 4 units rented, we're we're going to times that by 75%, and that's going to bring us down to $10,038. So we're just going to say 10,000. The reason that I have to identify that 75% is because that 25% is calculated in there by the lenders usually. So I like to mention it and tell you why. Property management is not free. It's 8 to 12% per month, right? Properties don't go from one renter on Monday to another renter on Tuesday. So there's vacancies that we have to deal with, and that's time that you're not getting paid for lending this unit out to somebody else, right? So then on top of that, there's maintenance that comes up. So you've got wear and tear on your fixtures and your flooring and your paint and your appliances. They get old, they have to be replaced. So the banks usually say, 75% of the income from the property generated by the property will cover the vacancy, the management, and the maintenance. So we'll just use that number as well. Now, that's where we get our $10,000. So if you're a VA buyer, right, and I don't think that any VA buyers that are active duty at least are able and willing to make a play like this, but I wanted to use this as your example because one, it's a fantastic property. It's walking distance to the restaurants in Pacific Beach. It's walking distance to the beach. It's walking distance to the bars. You can really have a very enjoyable life in this property forever and ever and ever. And the fact that it has a 2, 2, 2, and a 3, you can grow a family in there. Right now, if you're a single guy or just dating or even married with no children, you can make a 2-bedroom work for you. Heck, you could probably even rent out the extra bedroom if you needed a little bit of assistance. But for the sake of this exercise, I'm having us VA buyer zero down occupying the cheapest unit. So the person that's paying $2,795 per month, please get out of the way. We got to move in within 60 days after close because that's what our loan says that we have to do, right? So now I'm living in there, and the 3 rents that I'm collecting while I'm living in those units is going to be the $4,600 and then $2,995, $2,995, right? So that's going to be $10,590 per month that I'm collecting, right? But what's my mortgage going to be? Well, we've got principal and interest, and we got taxes and insurance. So if I'm a VA buyer and I'm borrowing the appropriate amount to buy this property would be $3,350,000. For the sake of this exercise, I did not put the funding fee in there. If you ask what's the funding fee, just make an appointment with me. We can go through it, or you can find some videos on my YouTube channel that probably mention it and explain it there. But the $3,350,000 purchase, $3,350,000 owed amount is something that veterans that have a service-related disability with the VA that they're getting compensated for are exempt from. There's also 5 or 6 other exemptions. Just Google VA funding fee and you can find more information on that. Now, for that $3,350,000, I've got to plan for it to be a 5.5% interest rate is what I chose. So I've got to plan for something. So if your interest rate is going to be higher than that, then gross this up. If it's going to be lower than that, then gross it down. But the numbers are huge anyway. So we have $19,020 per month is just principal and interest. Now that's going to stay the same for 360 months. I also, in the numbers of projecting, I did not do any adjustments for the property taxes going up and insurance going up. Now, if I did that, that would get into all kinds of calculus and stuff. So I just wanted to keep it as simple as possible. Just understand that my numbers are off by a little bit because here in California, they can increase our property taxes by 2% per year. And our insurance costs certainly have not done anything but go up. So I would expect that the total of $4,154 a month that I would owe to the bank also that's collecting my mortgage payment is for my escrow account, so that $4,154 gets collected so that they can pay out my $13,000 per year insurance policy that ChatGPT told me that I would expect, and my $36,850 per year property tax on this $3.35 million purchase would be expected to pay also. So my total payment is $23,175. Now, here's the crazy part, right? Is I did not know what the results of this was going to be. So what I did is I said, hey, I'm going to project a couple of things. There's some assumptions that I need to make. And on my assumptions, I've got that well, first of all, let me go over my 3 rules. 3 rules to buying anything to make sense, right? Buy what you can afford is rule number 1. So don't ever find yourself in an arduous situation that you have to sell at a loss, or you have to get rid of the property, or you have to walk away and ruin your relationship with the VA. Rule number 2, you got to like the idea of living in that property, even if you're never going to live in it, because you're putting down 20-30% down on rental properties and you're never living in these properties. Please just don't buy anything that you wouldn't be happy to live in. And then rule number 3 is you got to love something big about the property, where it's at, what it is, what neighborhood it is, what the feeling is. It can't be money, though. It just cannot be money. And I also, as strong as it is, I don't want it to be something like, well, that's where we had our kids, that's where we raised our kids, that's where we did this, that's where we did that. Like, I don't want it to be like that. I want the property itself to justifiably make you love it, love that property because of that thing, or all of it even, right? Because that love is going to help you get over the resentment that's going to build up. And we're going to get into one of those things that's going to make you resent this property when you have to move out of it and pay more than what you're collecting in rent in order to keep owning this thing. But let's make it make sense. Okay, so now let's get into my assumptions. My assumptions are: buyers decide the price. The highest and best offer made to the seller is always who wins the property. So let's just assume that 3.35 million is the right price for this exercise. It's a very inflated amount, in my opinion. It's super inflated amount. The reason I think that it's a super inflated amount is because these numbers that we're going to get into, this thing doesn't even, with 0 down, it doesn't even get to where it's like even Stevens for 12 years. So you gotta be negative amortization on this for 12 years. In your, negative am on your, like, you got to keep contributing more than it's worth, or whatever, more than what's coming off, right? So let's get into this. The next assumption, the sample property, we have to know that there's no such thing as an investor that's going to actually put down the down payment that I've calculated, because they're always willing to pay less. So that's another thing that goes into this. If you're following rule number 2 and you're saying, I would be happy to live here, right? You're probably not buying in an area that's undesirable to live. You're probably not buying in an area where most of the occupants of this neighborhood are tenants or renters, right? So the investors don't play a whole lot in these owner occupant neighborhoods. For instance, my neighborhood is like over 90% owner occupants. None of them are being bought or even looked at by the investor sides, except for the flip opportunities where somebody has let the maintenance defer and the flipper gets it for a good price, fixes it up and sells it for a fantastic price to who? The owner occupant, which is 6 to 12 months after that deal anyway. So it's just a blip on the radar that an investor owns in neighborhoods like this, right? So then my next assumption is that the rent positive cash flow and the down payment, right? So I'm going to measure how much of a down payment is the investor going to have to put for his conventional loan or his DSCR loan in order to make the $10,000 per month of the calculated rental and 75% of the rent coming in to cover that for them. And it's going to be a huge number. And I didn't expect it to be such a huge number, but oh my gosh, it was huge. But I just wanted to understand, I want you to understand that, like, that's an amount of money that you would have to put down in order to have a zero, cash flow, where it's not negative and it's not positive. In this particular scenario, it's a huge number. But remember, it's that beach property. It's a 4-on-1. It's very desirable. It's walking distance everywhere. It's in wonderful condition. They're probably going to end up getting close to their price. It's just not going to be all the way up there. Now, the negative cash flow for a zero down buyer for the first year is going to be $9,790 per month, which is $117,000 in that year, right? Let me prop this up here because I'm gonna read this off. And this is first year of ownership, second year of ownership, third year, so on and so forth until I get to the 12th, right? So I'm just gonna jump to the annual cost. So in the first year, you're gonna shell out $117,000 more than you collect and rent in order to own this property. The second year, 109. The third year, 101. The fourth year, 92. The fifth year, 83. The sixth year, 73. Then 63. Then 52. On the ninth year, 41. Then 29. Then 16,500. Then 3,500. And now that was the 12th year. So you got through the entirety of the 12th year and you have come out of pocket $780,000, right? Now to measure that, I said, hey, ChatGPT, 22 years ago, I put in 117,000, then 109, then 101, and I went down the whole list. Okay, so for that 12 years, I contributed that amount of money, right? If I did that, and then at that 12-year mark, well, 10 years from today, right? 10 years ago from today, I just stopped contributing. I ended up developing an account. So this is only S&P 500 index. I ended up developing an account that is now today worth $2.55 million in this hypothetical situation. So if I go negative cash flow $780,000 over the first 12 years of ownership, and I compare that to going $780,000 into the S&P 500 at the same schedule as I was coming out of pocket for the ownership of the negative cash flow property, the S&P 500 stocks would be $2.55 million. Right now, let's back up. Why did I do 22 years ago to 10 years ago? That seems random, but it didn't end up being random. I was just trying to find that spot, right? And I found that spot. 12 years is how long it would take to feel the suck before you can start feeling the benefit. So now let's get into the benefit. So year number 13, your 13th year of ownership, you have now cash flowed the property by $10,000 a year. So that's like what, $800 a month, right? 14, 25,000 positive. 15, 40,000. 16, 56,000. 17, 72, then 90, then 108, then 128, $10,000 a month cash flow, and I still am paying the mortgage. So on top of the cash flow, on top of the mortgage, on that 20th year of ownership, I just net proceeded myself by $10,000 a month. That's fantastic. And I still have this huge $23,000 mortgage in this situation, right? So now year 21, $148,000 in the form of $12,000 a month. Then $14,000 a month hit me up to 170. Now at that point, somewhere in the 22nd year, I will have recouped my $780,000, which is why I did that. Ha! Boom! So 22 years of ownership, I've got my $780,000 back. Now you're saying, hey, Danny, whoa, hold on. We put all that money in the S&P 500 and we didn't pull any of it out. What does that look like? Oh, okay, cool. I wanted to do it. So I asked ChatGPT, yeah, hey, so year 10, I pulled out this much, then this much, then this much, then this much. Year 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let me know, right? And I pulled out those same amount of monies from that same S&P index, right? So now we put in 780 on the S&P index and we've pulled out 840, right? So now at this point, I'm looking real crazy. Like, what is my balance? When did I run out of money? I thought for sure it was going to say that I ran out of money year 6 or 7 ago, right? Nope. I didn't run out of money. I still got $1.1 million in that S&P holdings. So hold on. 22 years ago, you put in all this money. For 12 years, you put in money, and it was $780,000. And then for the following 10 years, you pulled out 840,000 and you still have 1.1 million dollars in that S&P index. What? Why aren't we going through things like this with our children who are, mine are 16 and 19, right? What if at age 20 my kids just started doing that schedule? Boom, 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 right? By the time that they're 32, they can stop putting in their monies, and when they're 33 they can start pulling monies out, and by 42 they still have 1.1 million dollars. Crazy. Pretty cool also, right? That's to me kind of like free money, if you will, if you'll allow it, right? There's this guy in the past who's like free real estate, right? But now let's compare that to the ownership of this property instead of doing the S&P 500. So one guy does the S&P 500 at the same schedule as the other guy is doing the negative cash flow turning into positive cash flow. Both scenarios, this guy ends up with 1.1 million. If this guy ends up putting in his cash flow at 10 years ago, I started putting in this much money per S&P. So all of his cash flow, if he puts that into the S&P, I'll be right back. I didn't ask that question. I need to. All right, and I'm back. And oh my gosh, you will not believe what it is. It's $1.2 million. So wait, hold on. At this schedule, let me tell you, it's negative for the first 12 years. 117,000, 109,000, 101,000, 92,000, 83,000, 73,000, 63,000, 52,000, 41,000, 29,000, 16,500, 3,500, and then we get into the positive starting 10 years ago, 10,000, 25, 40, 56, 72, 90, 108, 128, 148, 170. So in this schedule, it costed you that negative for the first 12 years, and then it got into the positive for the next 12 or for the next 10 years, right? So you put in 780, you got out 840, right? If you did the same thing in the S&P 500, remember you put in 780 and then you got out the 840, you would be left with 1.1 million. Now, if you bought the property and you went negative that 780 into the property, but then you took the positive cash flow for the last 10 years and you invested just the positive cash flow into the S&P 500 for the last 10 years, you would be at $1.2 million in S&P 500 and you would still own the property. What? Are you kidding me right now? This is the magic. This is the magic. This is why you need to be working with people like me, the ones that are thinking about the big picture and advising about, think about the big picture. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just going to tell you what to expect. I'm going to tell you how to deal with it. I'm going to tell you your options. I'm going to let you understand the deep-seated short-term, long-term windfalls and costs and sacrifices so that you can make an informed decision and you can put yourself into the amount of suck that you're willing to go into so that the brightness on the other side is plentiful. You ain't just looking for greener grass. You're going to be pastures. You're going to be meadows, right? Now I'm getting all into preaching. No, I'm not preaching today. What I'm doing today is being surprised. I am so glad. I've been mulling on this idea for like 3 years. I'm so glad I put this deal together. I put this model together. So listen to what I said. The VA buyer buys the property at $3.35 million. It cost them $23,000 to hold it. They're only renting it for $10,000 a month, and then they're living in it, and they're collecting that $10,000 a month and they're paying out $23,000. Then they move out of it, and then they increasing the rents. It's just, you got to keep doing it so that it makes sense, right? But listen, you put in that 780 and then you still own the property, right? And you finally got to the point where it's positive cash flow, and you didn't take it back to yourself in the form of in the savings account. You instead took all that positive cash flow and put it into the S&P 500. Right? That money is $1.2 million. And remember, the guy that put in the 780 in the S&P 500 and did not take the withdrawals for that last 10 years, he's only got 2.55 million. Now, you got one guy who did the 780 in, 840 out, 1.1 in hand. The other guy, 780 in, nothing out, and he's getting 2.55 million. He has 2.55 million in his S&P. Then you've got the third guy who bought the property, went 780 into the property, and then took the cash flow of 840 in the most recent 8 or 10 years and invested it into the S&P 500 index, and now he has 1.2 million in stock. You know what else is crazy? The owed amount 22 years into this loan is 1.3 million dollars. How is this real? How is this real? If this, what are we doing? Why aren't we teaching our kids this stuff? And you know what? F it. Let's do it. Let's freaking do it. This is dope. If you can afford to get qualified for the $23,000 mortgage, and you can do this for 22 years, I want you to call me and say, hey, man, saw your deal. Let's do it. Right? Because here's the part that you didn't even get yet. 4% increase in value for appreciation, which is, in my opinion, pretty low because we're in one of the most desirable neighborhoods in San Diego, California, which is Pacific Beach, where all the people go to party and get loose, and they love the beaches and just relax, right? Here we are. The place is worth $8 million. You owe 1.3 million. If on that day you sold it, you would have $7,360,000 after you paid the realtors and your closing costs. You pay off your $1.3 million loan and you have $6 million to do a 1031 exchange or take as an income and hate the tax bill. Now, here's the crazy part. If you were able to not take the cash flow for the last 10 years, you also have $1.2 million in the S&P 500. So you've got a decision to make, right? This place, these 4 units collectively are now renting for $37,000 a month in this model because I increased rents by 5% per year, which is the California bottom of the standard on the California standard, because California says you can increase your rents by 5% plus the cost of living. And this is in most markets in California. So now here we are collecting $37,000 a month, right? And yes, there is property tax, insurance, all that. But what is that? $37,000 times 0.75, because that's what the banks use to calculate for everybody else, right? $27,000. You can sell your $1.2 million in S&P 500, take another $100,000 out of your life and say, boom, owned, free, and clear. You could also borrow up to 80%. Well, let's call it 70%. Let's be conservative. If you got $8 million, you can borrow up to 70%. $5.6 million. You could be your own bank. You can do all kinds of stuff. You could go to a private money guy and say, hey, man, here's the deal. I know you usually get 10 to 12%, but I don't know how much money you're working with. But if you have any money that you'd be willing to lend me out, like 2 million, 2.5 million, whatever amount I need, at 6%, I'll let you lean on my house. And by the way, you'd be in first position. Bro, they might be like, take it all. Take it all, take it all. Here's a $6 million, here's a $5.6 million line of credit. Spend what you need and don't pay me unless you're using it, right? So now you just have to go find places where you're going to make better than the 5% or 6% cost on that money, and you can start just multiplying all of this stuff. I get it. It's 22 years later. I would be 66 at 22 years later. And I'll tell you what, man, like my mom just turned 70. My dad died at 68. If I did this for the next 22 years and then I died 2 years after that, right? My wife and my kids would be fine. You see, my mom, she's fine, but it's because she earned her security, right? She earned her own security. She was a civil servant and she retired from civil servant. So she gets her pension and she gets her medical. Now she gets the old people stuff, right? Meta, whatever. Now, if I did this, I would be so elated. But here's what you're stuck on. What you're stuck on is, how much is BAH? Oh, BAH is $3,800 a month. Well, how come? How much can I borrow for that? Okay, this much. Well, now we're into condos. How much do we need to dial down the deal to meet up with the HOA costs? Okay, yeah. And you're thinking, well, what can I rent? You know, I'm going to spend $5,000 a month on owning something that I can rent for $3,500. I can afford the rent in BH, but I can't afford the mortgage on BH. So what do I do? Why would I do this? Right? This is why you would do it. And if you want me to show you the work, all you got to do is hit me up 760-497-9964. Send me a text message, give me a call, do whatever you got to do to get a hold of me, and I'll show you my work. And better yet, we'll pick a property in your market and I'll show you my work. And then you can get to work on getting your pre-approval, seeing if you can afford that deal. If you can't afford that deal, link up with my go-to realtor in that market and go get that house. Let's go. Hit me up. There's a link in this email. If you're getting this by email, there's a link in the email to book a call with me, to book a Zoom call with me. If you can't find that link, just search DannyBarkerRealtor.com. Make yourself a lead. It's going to come straight to my phone. I'll text you. I'll call you. We'll set up a Zoom call so that I can do a screen share and show you my work, and we can get to work for you. Thank you very much, everybody. I love you, my veteran community. I want the best for all of us. I know that the suck sucks, and you know that the suck sucks. But on the other side of the suck is freedom. On the other side of the suck is respect. On the other side of the suck is that meadow that you deserve. So let's go get it.